The warship hung in the void, like a predator too vicious to be caged, its hull glinting faintly under the cold light of a dying star. The Ares Ascendant wasn't just a vessel. It was a statement, a human fist slammed into the galaxy's fragile table of peace. For centuries, the Galactic Council had preached harmony, balance, and restraint, their treaties binding 1,000 species into a brittle web of coexistence. But humanity? We'd never been good at playing nice. And when we unveiled the Ares, the Council didn't just flinch. They panicked. The commander stood on the bridge, his boots planted firm against the low hum of the deck. He was a man carved from stubborn grit, scarred, unyielding, and tired of apologies. His gray eyes traced the holodisplay flickering before him, a live feed of the Council's armada, a mismatched fleet of sleek Elthari cutters and lumbering Koran dreadnoughts, all converging on their position. They'd come to enforce the edict, Declaration 719, the order that branded the Ares an abomination, a weapon too dangerous to exist. Illegal, they called it. He smirked. Illegal was just another word for effective. "Status," he barked, voice rough as gravel. The lieutenant spun in her chair, fingers dancing over the console. "Shields at full, gravitic cannons primed. The Council's hailing us again, third time in 10 minutes. They're demanding surrender." "Let 'em wait," he said, crossing his arms. "What's the word from Earth?" She hesitated, her sharp features tightening. "High Command says we're on our own. They're disavowing the Ares, claiming it was a rogue project." A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. 20 souls who'd poured their lives into this ship, who'd defied orders and treaties to see it fly. The commander felt the sting of it, too, a bitter twist in his gut. Earth had birthed the Ares in secret, funneled billions into its tech. Nanite swarms, quantum reactors, weapons that could crack moons like eggshells. And now, with the Council closing in, they'd cut the cord. Cowards. "Rogue project," he muttered, almost laughing. "Guess that makes us pirates." "Sir?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. Fear, yes, but something fiercer, too. Loyalty. "What's the play?" He didn't answer right away. He turned to the viewport, staring at the Ares' reflection in the starlight. It was beautiful in a brutal way. Sleek curves hiding a skeleton of reinforced alloy, its surface crawling with adaptive nanites that could repair breaches in seconds. The ship wasn't just advanced. It was alive, a beast bred for war in a galaxy that pretended it didn't need one. The Council feared it because they couldn't control it. And humans? They feared it because it showed what we could become. "Open the channel," he said finally. "Let's hear what they've got to say." The holo flared to life, projecting the Council's envoy, an Elthari named Vixra, all shimmering scales and sanctimonious calm. Her voice slithered through the speakers, precise and cold. "Commander, this is your final warning. The Ares Ascendant violates every tenet of galactic law. Its weapons threaten the stability of 100 systems. Power down and submit to decommissioning, or we will act." He leaned forward, letting the silence stretch just long enough to unnerve her. "You know what's funny, Vixra? You call it a threat. I call it insurance. Your precious Council's been strangling us for decades. Taxes, sanctions, peacekeeping fleets parked over our colonies. The Ares levels the field." Vixra's eyes narrowed, a flicker of violet in the holo. "You overestimate your position, human. You are one ship. We are many." "And yet you're scared," he shot back. "If we're so insignificant, why's half your fleet breathing down my neck?" The envoy didn't flinch, but the pause told him everything. She cut the feed, and the holo winked out. The lieutenant's console pinged a second later. "They're charging weapons," she said, voice tight. "Orders?" His jaw clenched. He'd known it had come to this the moment they'd launched. The Ares wasn't built to bow, it was built to fight. and now abandoned by Earth, hunted by the galaxy. It was all they had left. He glanced at his crew, saw the resolve in their faces, the quiet fire of people with nothing to lose. "Battle stations," he said. "Let's show 'em why they're right to be afraid." The deck thrummed as the Ares woke fully, its systems singing a song of defiance. Out there, the Council's ships closed in, a noose tightening around a beast they didn't understand. He settled into his chair, the weight of it all pressing down. Betrayal, pride, and a flicker of something darker. This wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's last stand, and he'd be damned if it went down quiet. The Ares Ascendant shuddered as its engines flared, a deep growl reverberating through the hull. The commander didn't flinch. He'd felt worse tremors on training runs, back when the ship was still a skeleton of ambition buried in Earth's orbital yards. Now, though, it wasn't a drill. The Council's fleet was moving, their ships spreading out like a pack of wolves circling prey. He could see it on the holo display, the Elthari cutters darting into flanking positions, their plasma lances glowing hot, while the Koran dreadnoughts lumbered forward, bristling with missile bays. They outnumbered the Ares 10-1. Maybe more. But numbers didn't tell the whole story. Not with this ship. "Targeting solutions locked," the lieutenant called out, her voice cutting through the hum of the bridge. "Gravitic cannons are ready on your mark. Shields holding at 98%. He nodded, his gaze fixed on the viewport. The enemy fleet was a swarm of lights against the black, each one a promise of violence. He'd seen combat before, pirate raids, border skirmishes, but nothing like this. The Council didn't fight dirty, they fought absolute. They'd drown the Ares in firepower until nothing was left but slag and silence. Unless he hit first. Unless he hit hard. "Fire," he said, the word dropping like a stone. The deck pulsed as the gravitic cannons unleashed their fury. Invisible waves of force rippled out, distorting space itself. The nearest Elthari cutter didn't stand a chance. Its hull crumpled inward, folding like wet paper before erupting in a silent bloom of fire and debris. The bridge crew didn't cheer. They didn't have time. Alerts screamed as the Council returned fire, plasma bolts slashing across the void. The Ares' shields flared, absorbing the hits, but the strain was already showing. Nanites swarmed the hull, patching microfractures as fast as they formed. "Evasive pattern, Delta," he ordered. "Keep us moving. Target the dreadnoughts next. They're the backbone." The ship lurched, its thrusters roaring as it twisted through the chaos. The lieutenant's hands flew across her console, rerouting power, recalibrating weapons. She was good. Damn good. And he trusted her with his life, with all their lives. But trust wouldn't stop the math. They were burning through energy reserves faster than he'd hoped, and the Council wasn't slowing down. For every ship they crippled, 2 more seemed to take its place. A voice crackled over the comms, sharp and urgent. "Sir, engineering reports a spike in the quantum core. It's overheating, pushing past safety limits." He cursed under his breath. The core was the Ares' heart, the tech that made it a monster. Unstable, unpredictable, and powerful enough to rewrite the rules of war. Earth's engineers had warned him, push it too far, and it could tear the ship apart. Or worse. He'd ignored them then, betting on human ingenuity to outpace alien caution. Now that bet was being tested. "Tell them to hold it together," he snapped. "We don't back off now." The lieutenant shot him a look, brief, piercing, but said nothing. She knew the stakes as well as he did. They'd all signed up for this, knowing it might end in a fireball. Knowing Earth had already written them off. The thought gnawed at him, a splinter of rage beneath the calm. His homeworld had built this ship to defy the galaxy, then abandoned it the second the galaxy pushed back. If they survived this, he'd have words for high command. If. Another blast rocked the Ares, the shields flickering as a Koran missile slipped through. The deck bucked, and a console sparked, sending one of the crew sprawling. "Hull breach, Sector 5, someone shouted. "Nanites are on it, but we're losing pressure." "Seal it off," he growled, steadying himself against his chair. "Focus fire on that dreadnought. Port side bearing 270. Take it down." The gravitic cannons sang again, and this time the dreadnought didn't just crack, it shattered, its midsection collapsing into a vortex of twisted metal and venting atmosphere. A cheer finally broke through the crew, ragged and defiant, but it was short-lived. The holodisplay lit up with new signatures, reinforcements, pouring in from a jump point 10 clicks out. More ships. More guns. The council wasn't playing anymore. "Sir," the lieutenant said, her voice low, almost drowned by the alarms. "We can't take them all, not like this." He turned to her, saw the strain etched into her face, the same strain he felt in his bones. She wasn't wrong. The Ares was a marvel, but it wasn't invincible. Not yet. He clenched his fists, mind racing. Surrender wasn't an option. They'd dismantle the ship, lock the crew away, and bury humanity's defiance under a mountain of bureaucracy. Running might buy time. But where to? Earth wouldn't take them back. The colonies were too weak to hide them. "We don't have to take them all," he said finally, a spark igniting in his chest. "Just enough to make them regret this." She frowned, but before she could argue, the comms crackled again. This time it wasn't engineering. It was a signal, encrypted, human, and coming from deep space. "Unidentified source," the comms officer reported, voice trembling. "They're asking for you. Says it's about the Ares." He froze. A lifeline? A trap? Either way, it was a shift in the game. And right now, with the council bearing down and the ship bleeding, he'd take any chance he could get. "Patch it through," he said. "Let's see who's still betting on us." The static cleared, and a voice, human, rough, and impossibly familiar, filled the bridge. "You're a hard man to find, Commander. Thought you might need a hand." The voice on the comms cut through the chaos like a blade, rough-edged and human in a way that made the commander's skin prickle. For a moment, the blaring alarms and the shudder of the Ares ascendant under fire faded into the background. He knew that voice, gravelly, weathered, the kind that carried scars in every syllable. It belonged to a man he'd buried in his memory years ago, a ghost from a past he'd rather forget. But ghosts didn't hail warships in the middle of a firefight. "Who is this?" he demanded, his tone sharp enough to slice steel. "Identify yourself." A low chuckle crackled through the static, unhurried despite the hell breaking loose around them. "You've gotten grumpier, I'll give you that. It's me, you stubborn bastard. Thought you'd recognize an old friend." The commander's gut twisted. An old friend. That narrowed it down to a handful of names, most of them dead or scattered across the galaxy after the last war. But only one had the gall to sound amused while the Council's fleet pounded the Ares into submission. "You're supposed to be gone," he said, voice low. "Off the grid. What the hell are you doing out here?" "Watching you stir the pot, same as always," the voice replied. "Saw the Ares light up the feeds. Couldn't resist. Figured you'd need a lifeline about now." The lieutenant spun from her console, eyes wide. "Sir, incoming signatures. 5 ships, human transponders. They're closing fast from the jump point, armed to the teeth." The holodisplay flickered, confirming her words. 5 jagged silhouettes emerged from the void, their hulls patched and scarred, nothing like the pristine fleets of the Council. Pirate rigs, maybe, or rogue colony cutters, vessels that screamed defiance in every dented plate. The commander's mind raced. Reinforcements? Out here? It didn't add up. Earth had disavowed them, and no colony had the spine or the firepower to challenge the Council. Yet here they were, barreling toward the fight like they'd been waiting for the call. "Friends of yours?" the lieutenant asked, her tone laced with suspicion. "Not sure yet," he muttered. "Patch him through again." The comms flared back to life. "Like the surprise? Took some convincing, but I rounded up a few who still believe in what the Ares stands for. We're here to even the odds." "Even the odds?" The commander's laugh was bitter, edged with exhaustion. "We're staring down a Council armada. 5 ships won't change that." "5 ships and a plan," the voice shot back. "You've got the muscle, we've got the guile. Trust me for once, will you?" Trust. The word hit like a punch. He didn't trust easy, not after Earth's betrayal, not after years of watching allies turn tail when the heat came down. But the Ares was bleeding. Shields down to 60%. Nanites struggling to keep up with the damage. The Council's dreadnoughts were regrouping, their cutters weaving tighter patterns. And those reinforcements wouldn't stop firing just because a few humans showed up late to the party. He didn't have the luxury of doubt. "Fine," he growled. "What's the play?" "Keep their attention," the voice said. "Draw their fire, push those fancy cannons of yours to the limit. We'll flank them, hit their supply line, cripple their jump drives. They'll scatter when they realize they're stranded." It was reckless, insane even. The Ares could barely hold its own, and splitting the Council's focus relied on perfect timing, something they hadn't had since this mess started. But the alternative was dying slow, and he'd never been one for drawn-out endings. "Do it," he said to the lieutenant. "Full power to weapons. Target their lead ships. Make 'em flinch." She didn't hesitate, her hands a blur across the controls. The Ares roared back to life, gravitic cannons spitting death into the void. Another Elthari cutter imploded, its wreckage spiraling into a dreadnought's path. The Council fleet faltered, just for a heartbeat. And that's when the newcomers struck. The rogue ships darted in, fast and feral, unloading salvos into the enemy's rear. A supply frigate erupted in a plume of flame, its debris scattering like ash. The bridge crew let out a ragged cheer, but the commander didn't join them. He watched the holo, saw the Council adjust. Too fast, too smart. The dreadnoughts pivoted, their missile bays locking on to the new threat. The plan was working, but it was fragile. A house of cards in a storm. One wrong move, and they'd all be dust. "Shields at 40%, the lieutenant reported, her voice tight. "Cores spiking again, engineering screaming red." "Push it," he said, ignoring the dread creeping up his spine. "We stop now, we're done." The Ares shuddered as another hit landed, a plasma lance carving a gash along its flank. The nanites swarmed, but slower now, their reserves thinning. Out in the void, one of the rogue ships took a direct hit, its hull splitting open like overripe fruit. The comms crackled with a scream, then silence. The commander's jaw tightened, a cost he hadn't wanted to pay, but one he'd known was coming. "They're breaking formation," the lieutenant said, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "The Council's pulling back their cutters." He looked to the holo. She was right. The smaller ships were retreating, shielding the dreadnoughts as they lumbered toward the jump point. The plan was holding, barely. But the voice on the comms wasn't celebrating yet. "Stay sharp," it warned. "They're not running, they're regrouping, and they've got something big coming." The holo pinged, a new signature blooming at the edge of the system. Massive, sleek, and radiating power that dwarfed even the dreadnoughts. The commander's blood ran cold. He'd seen specs like that once, in classified briefs. Council superweapon, a planet killer they'd sworn never to deploy. Until now. "Guess they're done playing nice," he muttered, a grim smile tugging at his lips. Time to see what the Ares is really made of. The new signature on the holodisplay pulsed like a heartbeat, a colossus of sleek metal and malice dwarfing everything else in the void. The commander stared at it, his breath catching for a split second before he forced it steady. He'd heard whispers of the Council's Ecliptor, a ship so monstrous they'd buried its existence under layers of denials and redacted files. A planet killer, they called it, though no one had seen it in action. Until now. Its silhouette was all sharp angles and glowing conduits, a predator built to end wars before they started. And it was here, sliding into the fray with a silence that felt more threatening than any roar. "Status on that thing," he snapped, his voice cutting through the stunned quiet of the bridge. The lieutenant's fingers trembled as they danced over her console, pulling data from the Ares' sensors. "It's massive. 3 times our size. Energy readings off the charts. Weapons signatures match nothing we've got on file. Sir, it's charging something big." Big didn't cover it. The holo zoomed in, showing a faint shimmer along the Ecliptor's bow, a distortion that screamed experimental tech, the kind that could vaporize the Ares and its ragtag allies in one shot. The commander's mind raced, piecing together scraps of intel from old briefings. If the rumors were true, that shimmer was a graviton lance, a weapon that didn't just destroy, it erased collapsing matter into nothing. The Council hadn't just brought a hammer, they'd brought the end of the game. The comms crackled, the rough voice of their mysterious ally breaking through. "You seeing this? That's their ace. Didn't think they'd pull it this fast?" "Yeah, I see it," the commander growled. "You didn't mention a damn superweapon in your plan." "Didn't know they'd bring it," the voice shot back, a hint of strain beneath the bravado. "We've got a window, 10 minutes, maybe less, before it fires. Hit it now or we're all ash." "Hit it with what?" The lieutenant's voice was sharp, almost breaking. "Shields are at 30%. Core's on the edge of meltdown. We're barely holding off the dreadnoughts." The commander didn't answer right away. He stared at the Ecliptor, its bulk a taunt against the battered Ares. She was right. They were stretched thin, bleeding power and crew with every passing second. The rogue ships were still out there, harrying the Council's flanks, but they were flies against a Titan now. He could feel the weight of every eye on the bridge, waiting for him to pull a miracle out of the void. He'd gotten them this far on grit and gamble. But this was something else. "Divert everything to the cannons," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "All power, shields, thrusters, life support if you have to. One shot." The lieutenant's head snapped up, eyes wide. "Sir, that'll leave us defenseless. If we miss—" "We won't miss," he cut her off. "Make it count." She hesitated, just a heartbeat, then nodded. The bridge hummed as systems rerouted, the lights dimming to a sickly flicker. The Ares groaned under the strain, its frame trembling like a beast pushed past its limit. Out in the void, the Ecliptor's shimmer grew brighter, a promise of annihilation drawing closer. The commander gripped the armrests of his chair, knuckles white. This was it, the line between defiance and oblivion. "Cannons at critical," the lieutenant reported, her voice tight. "Target locked, firing on your mark." He didn't blink. "Now." The gravitic cannons unleashed a roar that shook the ship to its core, a wave of force so raw it felt like the Ares was tearing itself apart to deliver it. The blast ripped through the void, a distortion that warped light and space as it slammed into the Ecliptor. For a moment, nothing. Just silence, the holo frozen mid-update. Then the superweapon buckled, its bow crumpling inward like a tin can under a boot. A chain reaction sparked along its hull, conduits bursting until the whole thing erupted in a blinding flash that whited out the viewport. The bridge erupted in shouts, relief, disbelief, but the commander didn't join them. He saw the cost on the lieutenant's console. Shields gone, core critical, half the ship dark. They'd hit the beast, but they'd gutted themselves to do it. And the council wasn't done. The comms buzzed again. "Nice shot," the voice said, ragged now. "But you've pissed 'em off. Dreadnoughts are coming back. Full burn. We're out of tricks." The holo confirmed it. The remaining council ships, enraged or desperate, were charging in, weapons hot. The Ares was a sitting duck, its nanites too depleted to patch the gaping wounds. The commander leaned back, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. They'd taken down the Ecliptor, proved the galaxy wrong about human limits. But survival? That was another fight. "Options," he said, turning to the lieutenant. She swallowed hard, scanning the readouts. "Core's at meltdown threshold. We could vent it, eject, and detonate. Might take a few of them with us." A suicide play. He hated it, hated the thought of giving up the Ares after everything. But the crew, those 20 souls who'd followed him into this mess, deserved better than a quiet end. He glanced around, saw the exhaustion, the resolve. They'd known the risks. They'd chosen this. "Do it," he said. "Set the timer. Get everyone to the pods." The lieutenant moved fast, barking orders as the crew scrambled. The commander stayed where he was, eyes on the viewport. The Ares had been his defiance, his proof that humanity wouldn't bend. Now it'd be their torch, a blaze to light the galaxy's nightmares. As the evacuation klaxon wailed, he whispered to the ship, "You did good." The dreadnoughts closed in, oblivious to the trap ticking down in the dark. The evacuation pods jettisoned from the Ares ascendant like seeds scattered from a dying tree, each one a fragile hope against the void. The commander watched them streak away on the holo display, his chest tight with something he wouldn't call fear. Not yet. The bridge was empty now, save for him and the lieutenant, who'd refused to leave her post. Her hands still hovered over the console, setting the quantum core's overload sequence, her jaw set in a line that said she wasn't asking for permission to stay. "Pods are clear," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in the deck beneath them. "Cores at critical mass. Detonation in 90 seconds. He nodded, his gaze flicking to the viewport. The council's dreadnoughts loomed closer, their hulking forms blotting out the stars, cannons glowing with the promise of a quick end. They didn't know what was coming. A blast that had turned the Ares into a supernova, taking as many of them with it as physics allowed. It wasn't victory, not really, but it was something. A scar on the galaxy's face they wouldn't forget. "Should have gone with them," he said, not looking at her. "Someone had to push the button," she replied, a faint edge of defiance in her tone. "Besides, you didn't." He almost smiled. Almost. She was right. He couldn't leave the Ares, not after everything it had carried them through. It was more than a ship. It was their defiance, their rage, their proof that humanity wouldn't just roll over for the Council's boot. If it was going down, he'd go with it, and she'd made the same call. The comms crackled, the rough voice of their ally breaking through one last time. "Pods are out. Good work. We're pulling back, drawing their fire. If you're still on that thing, get the hell off now." "Too late for that," the commander said, keeping his tone flat. "Make sure the crew gets clear, that's all that matters." A pause, then a curse muttered through the static. "You're a damn fool, always were. Good luck, you crazy bastard." The line went dead, and the holo showed the rogue ships veering off, luring a few of the dreadnoughts into a chase. It wouldn't save the Ares, but it might buy the pods time. That was enough. The commander settled into his chair, the deck vibrating as the core's whine grew deafening. 60 seconds. "You ever think it'd end like this?" the lieutenant asked, her voice softer now, almost lost in the noise. He glanced at her, saw the flicker of something human in her eyes. Regret, maybe, or just exhaustion. "Didn't think that far," he admitted. "Just wanted to hit back, make 'em feel it." She nodded, like that was answer enough. "They'll feel this." The viewport flared as a dreadnought fired, a missile slamming into the Ares' flank. The ship lurched, consoles sparking, but the nanites were long past saving it. The core's timer ticked down. 30 seconds. The commander's mind drifted, unbidden, to Earth, to the brass who'd cut them loose, the colonies they'd fought for, the people who'd never know what this ship had done. He didn't hate them. Not anymore. Hate took energy, and he was spent. 10 seconds, the lieutenant said, her voice cutting through the haze. She stood straighter, facing the viewport like she was daring the dreadnoughts to look her in the eye. He rose too, stepping beside her. The Ares trembled, its death throes shaking the air. 5 seconds. The dreadnoughts filled the view, their cannons charging for the kill shot they'd never get to fire. 3, 2, 1. A hand grabbed his arm, hard, real, not the ghost of memory. His vision blurred, then snapped into focus. He wasn't on the bridge. He was in a pod, strapped tight, the lieutenant beside him, her face pale but alive. The Ares was a shrinking dot on a cracked view screen, the dreadnoughts swarming it like flies. A flash, brighter than any star, erupted, swallowing the ship and half the enemy fleet in a sphere of annihilation. The shockwave hit, rocking the pod, but it held. "What the hell?" he started, voice hoarse. "Remote trigger," she said, breathless. "Said it before we launched. You didn't think I'd let you stay, did you?" He stared at her, the weight of it sinking in. She dragged him off the bridge, overridden his death wish with a stubbornness he hadn't seen coming. The Ares was gone, its final act a blaze of glory. But they weren't. Not yet. The pod's comms buzzed, the Allies' voice cutting through. "You're alive? Damn it, I owe someone a drink. Rendezvous points ahead, pods are safe, but the Council's still out there. Move fast." The commander leaned back, the adrenaline fading into a dull ache. They'd lost the ship, but they'd gutted the enemy, bought time for the crew. It wasn't over. The Council would hunt them, Earth would deny them, and the galaxy wouldn't forgive. But as the pod streaked toward the rogue ships, he felt a spark reignite. The Ares was dead. Its fight wasn't. "Get us there," he said, voice rough but steady. "We're not done yet." The pod rattled through the void, its hull creaking under the strain of a journey it wasn't built to endure. The commander sat strapped in, his hands clenched around the armrests, staring at the cracked view screen. The Ares Ascendant was gone. A fading smear of light and debris on the sensor feed, its final explosion still echoing in his bones. Half the Council's fleet had gone with it. Dreadnoughts reduced to twisted husks drifting in the dark. A victory, maybe, if you could call losing everything a win. He didn't feel victorious. He felt hollow, like the ship had taken a piece of him when it blew. The lieutenant worked the pod's controls, her movements precise despite the sweat beading on her forehead. She'd saved him, dragged him off the bridge, triggered the core remotely, kept them both breathing when he'd been ready to burn. He hadn't thanked her yet, didn't know how. Words felt cheap against the weight of what they'd lost. "Rendezvous in 5 minutes," she said, her voice cutting through the hum of the pod's struggling systems. "The others are already there. Pods linked up with those rogue ships. We're the last ones." He grunted, his gaze shifting to the sensor display. The rogue fleet, or what was left of it, blipped faintly ahead, 5 battered hulks holding position near a asteroid cluster. Their allies' voice had promised safety, but safety was a lie out here. The Council wouldn't let this slide. They'd lost their Ecliptor, half their armada, and whatever pride they'd clung to. They'd hunt the Ares' crew to the edge of the galaxy, and Earth wouldn't lift a finger to stop it. Disavowed meant disposable. "You trust him?" she asked, not looking up from her console. "This guy who showed up out of nowhere?" "No," he said flatly. "But he's all we've got." She nodded, like that was enough. It wasn't, not really, but they'd run out of choices the moment the Ares launched. The pod shuddered again, a warning light flashing, fuel reserves dipping into the red. They'd make it, barely, if nothing went wrong. He didn't bet on that anymore. The comms buzzed, and the rough voice crackled through. "You're cutting it close. Dock's open. Get in quick. We've got company on the scopes." "Company?" The commander leaned forward, his gut tightening. "Council?" "Not yet," the voice replied. "Scavengers, maybe, or worse. Point is, we're not sticking around to find out." The lieutenant adjusted their trajectory, the pod lurching toward the lead rogue ship, a hulking freighter with more patches than paint. Its bay yawned open, a dim maw swallowing them as they coasted in. The landing was rough, metal screeching against metal, but the clamps locked, and the pod powered down with a groan. For a moment, silence. Then the hiss of the hatch as it unsealed. He unstrapped, rising stiffly, every muscle screaming from the fight. The lieutenant followed, her steps steady despite the shadows under her eyes. They stepped out into the freighter's bay, a cavernous space lit by flickering strips, littered with crates and the stench of burnt wiring. Figures moved in the gloom, hardened men and women, armed and wary, their faces a mix of relief and suspicion as the pod's crews gathered. A man strode forward, tall and grizzled, his coat patched with colony insignia long faded. That voice in the flesh, older, rougher, but unmistakable. "You look like hell," he said, a crooked grin breaking through the scars. "Good to see you anyway." The commander didn't return the smile. "You've got a lot of explaining to do. Who are you running with, and why'd you stick your neck out for us?" The man's grin faded, his eyes sharpening. "Call it a debt. You and that ship. You lit a fire the galaxy needed. These folks." He gestured to the crew behind him. "They're the ones who've been waiting for it. Outcasts, rebels, people Earth forgot. We're not much, but we're yours if you'll have us." "Mine?" The commander's laugh was harsh. "I don't even have a ship anymore." "You've got a name," the man said. "And what you did out there. That's a spark. Council's rattled, Earth's squirming. We can use that." The lieutenant stepped closer, her voice low. "He's right. We're alive. That's more than they expected. We can still fight." He looked at her, then at the ragtag group, maybe 50 strong, their ships barely space-worthy but bristling with defiance. A spark, he'd said. Maybe. But sparks could fizzle, and the Council's fist was still out there, hunting. He felt the weight of it all, the Ares' loss, the crew's trust, the betrayal of Earth. It pressed down, threatening to crush him, but beneath it, something stirred. Anger. Purpose. "What's the plan?" he asked, meeting the man's gaze. "Hide for now," the man said. "Regroup, rearm. The Council thinks you're dead. Lets us move quiet. There's a colony, fringe space, owes me favors. We start there." "And then?" the lieutenant pressed. "Then we hit back," the man said, his grin returning, feral now. "Harder." A klaxon blared, cutting through the moment. One of the rebels shouted from a console. "Contacts! Closing fast! Energy spikes! Council signatures!" The commander's blood ran cold. Not scavengers. The Council had tracked them faster than he'd feared. The freighter's engines rumbled, the deck tilting as it prepared to run. He glanced at the lieutenant, saw the fire in her eyes mirror his own. "Get us moving," he said to the man. "We're not dying here." The freighter lurched, and the fight began again. The freighter's engine screamed as it tore through the void, the asteroid cluster shrinking to specks behind them. The commander braced against a bulkhead in the cramped bay, the deck shuddering beneath his boots. The air stank of sweat and scorched metal, the rebel crew shouting over the wail of alarms. The council had found them, too fast, too precise, and now their ships were closing, a trio of sleek frigates cutting through space like blades. No dreadnoughts this time, no ecliptor, but these were hunters, built for speed and slaughter, and the freighter was a lumbering beast by comparison. "Status!" he barked, his voice carrying over the chaos. The lieutenant shoved her way through the crowd, reaching a jury-rigged console bolted to the wall. "They're gaining. 3 minutes until weapons range. Our escorts are peeling off to intercept, but they won't hold long." He cursed under his breath. The rogue ships, those patched-up relics, were brave but outmatched. They'd bought time with the Ares' sacrifice, but time was a currency running dry. He turned to the grizzled man who'd pulled them from the fire, his coat flapping as he barked orders to his crew. "You said we'd hide. This isn't hiding." The man shot him a look, half grimace, half grin. "Plans change when the bastards get smart. They must have tagged one of the pods, tracked us here. We're running for the jump point, fringe space. If we make it, we're ghosts." "If," the commander muttered. He didn't like ifs. Ifs got people killed. He glanced at the console's flickering display. 2 of the rogue ships were already taking hits, their signatures winking out as plasma lances carved them apart. The freighter's hull groaned, a deep, mournful sound, and he felt the loss of the Ares all over again, a wound that wouldn't close. "Shields at 60%, the lieutenant reported, her voice tight. "Engines overheating. We've got maybe 10 minutes before we're dead in the water." "Push it," he said, meeting her gaze. "All or nothing." She nodded, relaying the order to the rebels at the helm. The freighter lurched, its thrusters flaring brighter, but the council frigates matched pace, their energy signatures spiking as weapons charged. The commander's mind raced, options thinning, each one bleaker than the last. Fight and die. Run and maybe die. Surrender wasn't on the table. Not after what they'd done. Not with the Ares' ghost still burning in the void. A rebel, a wiry woman with a scarred face, stumbled over, gripping a handheld scanner. "Jump point's in range, but they're locking disruptors. If they fire, we're stuck." The grizzled man swore, slamming a fist against a crate. "Then we don't let 'em fire. Guns. Focus on their lead ship. Buy us a window." The freighter's turrets whined to life, spitting salvos of kinetic rounds into the dark. The lead frigate jinked, its shields flaring, but it didn't slow. A plasma bolt answered, slamming into the freighter's flank. The deck bucked, sending crates sliding, and a scream cut through the bay as a rebel went down, pinned under debris. The commander steadied himself, the taste of blood in his mouth, his own, from a bitten lip. "Shields at 40, the lieutenant said, her voice rising. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, sealing, but we're losing air." He grabbed the console's edge, staring at the jump point's coordinates pulsing on the screen. Close, so damn close, but the frigates were closer, their disruptors glowing hot. One shot, and they'd be trapped, picked apart like carrion. He felt the weight of it all, the crew's lives, the rebels' faith, the Ares' legacy, pressing down, threatening to break him. But he'd never broken easy. "Ramming speed," he said, the words cold and final. The lieutenant's head snapped up. "What?" "Angle us at the lead frigate," he said. "Full burn. They won't expect it. Gives the others a shot at the jump." The grizzled man spun, eyes wide. "You'll kill us all." "Maybe," the commander shot back. "Or we take one with us and the rest get clear. Your call. Lead or follow." A heartbeat of silence. Then the man nodded, grim. "Helm, do it. Full burn." The freighter surged, its engines howling as it swung toward the lead frigate. The council ship loomed larger on the view screen, its crew no doubt scrambling as the collision course registered. The lieutenant gripped his arm, her breath quick. "This better work." "It will," he lied, hoping she didn't hear the doubt. The gap closed. 5 kilometers, 3, 1. The frigate fired, a disruptor beam lancing out, but the freighter's bulk ate it, shields collapsing in a shower of sparks. Impact in 10 seconds. The commander braced, the bay a cacophony of shouts and straining metal. 5 seconds. The view screen whited out as the ships met. A jolt, bone-rattling, world-ending. Then darkness. He came to, sprawled on the deck, ears ringing. The lieutenant was beside him, coughing, alive. The console flickered, hull critical, engines offline, but the jump point was gone. They'd made it. The frigate hadn't. "Status," he rasped. "2 ships left," the grizzled man said, staggering over. "We rammed 'em, jumped mid-collision. They're gone, but we're limping." The commander pushed to his feet, the pain a distant roar. They'd survived. Barely. Fringe space stretched beyond the cracked view screen, a haven or a grave. The council would come again, but for now, they'd slipped the noose. He looked at the lieutenant, saw the fire still burning in her. They weren't done. "Get us patched up," he said. "We've got work to do." The freighter drifted through fringe space, a wounded beast licking its wounds in the shadow of a nameless gas giant. The commander stood in the bay, the air thick with the tang of burnt circuits and the low hum of jury-rigged repairs. The view screen, cracked but functional, showed the void beyond, a murky swirl of purples and blacks where the galaxy's edge blurred into lawless nothing. They'd made it, barely, the collision with the council frigate a gamble that had paid off in survival, not triumph. 2 rogue ships remained, their crews battered but breathing, the rest of the pods accounted for. The Ares Ascendant was a memory now, its blaze of glory a scar on the council's pride. But the fight wasn't over. The lieutenant approached, her face smudged with grime, a data slate in hand. "Hull's holding. Patches'll get us to the colony. Engines are at 20%, but we're moving. Crew's shaken, but they're with us." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the gas giant's rings glinting faintly in the distance. "And the council?" "No signatures yet," she said. "Jump threw 'em off, but they'll figure it out. They always do." She was right. The council wouldn't stop. Not after losing their ecliptor, their frigates, their illusion of control. The Ares had been a slap. This escape was a knife twist. They'd hunt these fringes, scour every rock and shadow until they stamped out the spark humanity had lit. He felt the weight of it. Every life on this ship, every rebel who'd thrown in with them. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about what came next. The grizzled man limped over, his coat stained with oil, his grin long gone. "Colony's a day out, old mining outpost off the grid. They've got fuel, parts, people who hate the council as much as we do. It's a start." "A start," the commander echoed, his voice rough. "We're down to 2 ships, half a crew, and no weapons worth a damn. What's the end game?" The man's eyes narrowed, a flicker of steel beneath the weariness. "You're the end game. That ship of yours, gone, sure. But what it did, that's a story spreading faster than we can run. Colonies are whispering, outcasts are listening. Earth might have cut you loose, but the galaxy's watching. We build on that." "Build what?" the lieutenant asked, her tone sharp. "An army? With what resources?" "Whatever we can scrape," the man said. "Steal, trade, fight for. The council's stretched. Losing that fleet hurt 'em. We hit their edges, their supply lines, their weak spots. Small at first, then bigger." The commander turned, meeting their gazes, one burning with pragmatism, the other with reckless hope. He saw the Ares in his mind's eye, its sleek hull, its cannons roaring, its final defiant flash. It had been a weapon, yes, but more than that, a symbol. Humanity didn't bow, didn't break, didn't beg. He'd lost it, nearly lost everything, but the fire it had kindled still burned in him, in them. "Small's not enough," he said finally. "They'll come hard. Next time it's not frigates, it's the full armada. We need more than whispers and scavengers." "Then we get it," the lieutenant said, stepping closer. "Colonies, pirates, anyone who's had their throat under the Council's heel. We've got proof now. They're not invincible. We use that." He looked at her, saw the steel in her spine, the same resolve that had pulled him off the Ares's bridge. She wasn't wrong. The Council had bled. They could bleed again. But it'd take more than guts. It'd take a plan, a fleet, a war they weren't ready to wage. Yet. The man clapped a hand on his shoulder, a rare weight of trust in the gesture. "You lead, we follow. That's the deal. Colony step 1. Rest up, rearm, figure out who's with us. After that, we make 'em pay." A klaxon chirped, soft, not urgent. The rebel at the helm called out, "Jump point's clear. Course locked for the colony." The commander nodded. "Take us in." The freighter rumbled, its engines coughing but compliant, limping toward refuge. He stayed where he was, the bay quieting as the crew settled into the uneasy calm of survival. The lieutenant lingered beside him, silent but present, her data slate dark now. He didn't need to ask what she was thinking. It was the same thing gnawing at him. The Ares was gone, but its shadow stretched long. Earth had abandoned them, the Council had underestimated them, and the galaxy would feel the fallout. He thought of the ship's last moments, the Corps' scream, the dreadnoughts vanishing in its wrath. It had been illegal, they'd said, too advanced, too dangerous. They were right, and he'd make damn sure they regretted it. Not with one ship this time, but with a fleet, a movement, a reckoning. The colony was a foothold, fringe space, a place to breathe, to plan. They'd lost everything, but they'd gained something too, a chance to hit back harder. "Rest while you can," he said to the lieutenant, his voice low. "This isn't the end." She met his eyes, a faint spark lighting hers. "Number, it's the beginning." The freighter slipped into the gas giant's shadow, the stars fading behind its bulk. Out there, the Council licked its wounds, Earth buried its shame, and the whispers grew louder. The Ares was dead. Its crew wasn't. And the galaxy wasn't ready for what came next.